In this video, I'm gonna go through some of the most common issues that you might find while you're making 3D. Most of these problems are mostly for beginners, but even if you're a mid or senior 3D artist already, you might find that you don't know some of these, so make sure to take a look and let me know if you find anything that's useful. So number one, the most common issues for most of these are inverted normals, endguns, non-manifold, and non-applied transforms. So you might want to go through all of these before actually going through any of other possible solutions. You actually want to go over all of these actually before actually sporting any model at all, even though it might not have any problem, just because you actually want to avoid having problems and not finding solutions for them. We're going to start with the basic ones. That's going to be a little bit longer, but the rest of them is going to be quick tips on how to solve some of the problems. In Blender, check the viewport overlay and tick the face orientation box. This way you can see the direction of the normals of your model, and you can find holes in your mesh if you have them. There's going to be something wrong with it. Or if there's anything like this, you just want to click all of them and recalculate outside. Next thing to check is endguns. So the way to do that in Blender, you want to go into edit mode, and if you go to the select and you look for the select all by trade, you can click on faces by side and change this number of vertices to greater than. And this way Blender will select anything that has more than 4 vertices. So here I found one and I just can get rid of it to make sure I won't have problems later. You can do the same thing for anything that is non-manifold. Non-manifold is going to be any geometry doesn't make sense in real life, if that explanation even makes sense. But the way to test this is also into the select tool, and you want to go into select all by trade and check non-manifold. It's going to also select the boundaries, so anything that is not closed, that's going to be selected. You want to untick this box, and the rest of them should be only actual non-manifold that you should be worried about. Here I found one and it's some internal faces, so I can just delete them and I'm okay. And last but not least, sometimes you might have some problems even like when modeling or inside Unity or Unreal, because of your scale that is not applied or something like this, or location and rotation. Usually things will look like this if that's the case. So you want to put your model on the center as best as you can and leave it at the scale that it should actually be used in game. So I'll test that with the Blender cube. Let's see, that's 2 meters, so I might have a very giant weapon here. So I'm gonna unscale and put somewhere around the center, and I'm gonna press Ctrl A and apply all transforms. That way I'm gonna avoid having more problems in the future. Face is not appearing. You can use viewport overlays to check inverted normals, and if that's not a problem, you can check if you have an endgun there. Get rid of the endgun and re-export. Weird triangle in engine. So every model is made of triangles in engine, and each engine or software has its own algorithm to triangulate meshes. So that might be the cause for your triangulation not be the same as it was on Blender. You want to make sure that your quads are straight, or if not, or if you need those triangles, you can triangulate in Blender to make sure you're getting the result you want. In here in Blender, I can just cut a line to make sure the triangle is going to be exactly the same as I want, and I re-export and I have the results I want in engine. The model is too big or small, so check the size of your models with the default cubes from Unity or Unreal. Unity default cube has 1 meter and Blender has 2 meters. So you want to compare with that. A weapon, for example, should be bigger than 1 meter. Then I can go on to Blender and fix the scale, apply all transforms, and re-export. So each engine has their specifics. When you import, you might be considering Blender patterns. Use apply transforms as regular, and also use apply transform on the export settings to make sure that you reset every transform. Weird shadows on low poly models, you can use the weighted normals modifier to fix that. You can make sure that your normals are correct with that. That's mainly useful when you're making hard surface modeling. Pink colors. On Unity and Blender, that's because I'm missing shaders or textures. You can just delete your texture and find that again. With the auto downscaling of textures in engine, texture might get into different UV islands. So you want to have a margin between your UV islands until you can't see the bleeding anymore. Bevel modifier is inconsistent. Your scale might not have been applied, so press Shift A and apply scale. Model is in a different position when I export. Make sure that your model doesn't have any hidden animation. You can do so by going to your outliner under your mesh and seeing if there's an animation there. You can right click and clear animation data. On top of that, press Ctrl A and apply all transforms. Metallic and roughness not looking like expected. You might need to turn off sRGB in the texture settings. If you don't do that, you might be getting some artifacts. On top of that, make sure you have a baked reflection probe in your scene. Normals are making the model black. Make sure the texture is set to normal in the texture settings. Black textures after baking lighting in engine. You can tick the generate light map UVs on your importing settings. Both Unity and Unreal have the option, or you can make your own UVs. If you create a new UV map, you can make sure that there's no overlaps or anything like that. So if you need on your original UV map, you can still have overlapping or anything, but make sure that you don't have that onto your second UVs that is going to be used for light map bakes. UVs are messed up when I bring to Substance Painter. Check if you don't have any inverted normals or a hidden geometry. You can also check if you don't have multiple UVs, and if you do, you can just delete them if you're not using that for light map bakes. But but make sure you have all your geometry UV unwrapped on your first UVs. That's where Substance Painter is gonna be looking for your UVs. Sometimes you bake some things that we're not supposed to bake. So the bake considers the normal of the faces, so you wanna make sure that they will have enough space between them so they won't affect each other. Make a version for the bake and another one for the final mesh. Also, make sure you're using by mesh name match to make sure that different objects are not affecting each other. Baking is completely off. Always check your UVs first and fix any problems there. Apply transforms for both high poly and low poly models and make sure both have decent normals. Trying to apply tieable textures, but the seams are too obvious. Use 3planar or another projection instead of the default one in Substance Painter. Your baked maps are not looking great. Make sure that the low poly wraps the high poly as best as it can, and you might want to smooth it out a few parts on the high poly so it shows better on the bake. Ambient occlusion not matching the bake. Make the low poly model wrap the high poly model better. Lighting is looking inverted in engine. So we have two types of normals, DirectX and OpenGL, and each of them have a different Y direction. So if you're having trouble with one of them, you might just want to change the one that you're exporting on the output templates parameters. Weight paint is not symmetrical. Usually that happens when the mesh itself is not completely symmetrical, so make sure it is and it should be okay. Character is deforming too much with animation. Use loop to protect the more critical parts of the character. There will be arms, legs, the neck, and any joint. On top of that, try to model your character in a more relaxed pose. That way you won't need to deform too much when it's animating. My mirror seam is too obvious in the texture. Use symmetry to guarantee that everything is symmetrical. And if not, fix the mirror seam in the high poly. And make sure you only baked one side of the mirror. You can do that by offsetting the UVs by 1 in your modifier. The tree leaves are looking completely weird. Use normal edit modifier to have more control over how the leaves normals behave. So that was it for this video. If that helped you in any way, let me know in the comments. Please leave a like and subscribe, and see you in the next video.